A single pull of the trigger, that's all it takes for life and death to shift sides. But what happens when a sniper, trained to never miss, does? In a war zone where mistakes cost more than lives, one missed shot didn't just echo across the desert. It ignited a chain of destruction that no one saw coming. Asterisk, they called him Ghost Eye not because he disappeared, but because once he locked in, nothing escaped. His breath control was the stuff of legends, and his trigger finger had ended more missions than airstrikes. For 6 years, he had moved through war zones as a silent judge, rendering verdicts one bullet at a time. No medals, no grand recognition, just mission after mission, face hidden behind a mask and soul buried behind a scope. That was the deal. That was the code. His latest assignment dropped into his lap like a whisper. One of those dry, classified notes passed without signature or eye contact, embedded behind enemy lines. He was to observe and, if given a clear window, eliminate a high-value target, a regional warlord who had been eluding U.S. eyes for nearly a year. The man's name wasn't important, but what he commanded was. I'd networks, smuggling routes, and a private militia with a reputation for ritual executions. He was the kind of monster that justified a single bullet solution. The terrain was unforgiving, sun-scorched ridgelines, jagged rocks, and valleys that swallowed sound. Ghost Eye had been inserted 3 nights prior under the cover of a sandstorm, dropped 5 clicks from the suspected convoy route, with no backup, no drone support, and only a satellite ping every 6 hours. It was just him, his rifle, and the weight of 1,000 dead stares inside the scope. By day 1, he had built a hide, a sniper's nest concealed with synthetic foliage and thermal blocking layers. He hadn't eaten in nearly 40 hours, sipping from a hydration tube and chewing caffeine gum to stay alert. He couldn't risk falling asleep, not even a blink. The desert was silent, but he knew better. They always moved when you stopped looking. On day 2, tracks appeared. Faint, deliberate. A 4-vehicle convoy approached from the south. Too far for details, but close enough to make his breathing hitch. He watched for patterns. Body language. Who exited first? Who held the radio? Who didn't speak? They didn't linger. They passed. No shot taken. No regret. That wasn't the target. Day 3 brought the real tension. Static whispered through his earpiece. Hawk confirms. Target is mobile. Approaching from North Quadrant. Estimated window, 15 minutes. Ghost Eye's fingers twitched. He adjusted the magnification, ran a final wind check, and mentally measured the distance. 800 meters, slightly downhill. He adjusted his scope, calibrated his breathing. The convoy arrived, slower this time. For trucks, he counted 12 men, all armed. A man stepped out, flanked by 2 others. The way the others deferred to him, this was it. This had to be him. Same beard, same build. Satellite ID matched facial structure at 85%. It wasn't perfect, but in war, perfect was rare. Ghost Eye exhaled. Time slowed. His heart didn't race. It never did. He found the rhythm in hold, squeeze. The rifle cracked once. The man dropped, clutching his chest, but something felt off. The bodyguards didn't panic. They didn't rush to check the body. They regrouped fast. A second man stepped forward, lifted a radio, and gave a quick signal. Then the convoy scattered, peeling away in practice formation. No chaos, no confusion. Ghost Eye blinked. Once, his breath froze. Something about their response screamed trained, not surprised. And the man he shot wasn't the leader, not even close. The way he fell, wrong stance, wrong weight shift, like he wasn't even armed. A decoy, bait, and he took it. For a moment, the world felt silent, just the breeze brushing through his hide and the faint hum of static in his ear. No voices, no chatter, nothing. Then came the encrypted burst on the secondary channel, short, urgent, irregular, the kind they used when things went sideways. He didn't understand the language, but the tone was. The bullet was gone, the target dead, and the desert once again held its breath. But something was wrong, deeply, unmistakably wrong. Ghost Eye had taken countless shots before, each one surgical, each followed by a ripple of silence. Mission complete. This time, the silence felt heavier. like the calm before a storm rather than the stillness of death. He felt it before he saw it, a prickling in the air, a subtle shift in the rhythm of the world. The miss wasn't just a mistake. It was the spark to something he didn't yet understand. By the time Ghost Eye reached the forward operating base, night had fallen hard. The wind howled across the wire fences, and the floodlights carved long shadows against the sand. He was debriefed in silence, the report logged with routine efficiency. Target neutralized. Operation successful. That was the official version. But even the intelligence officer reading the report kept glancing up, as if sensing that something about the kill was too easy, too clean. Within 2 hours, that unease hardened into a confirmed threat. Drone surveillance picked up heat signatures east of the valley, not retreating forces, but a concentration of vehicles and foot soldiers assembling near abandoned villages. The intercepted radio chatter crackled with a strange confidence. No code words, no encryption, just direct orders, given in bold tones. It wasn't the behavior of a network in disarray. It was a war party forming, and they were moving fast. The brass still didn't connect the dots. They had their confirmed kill and weren't ready to believe otherwise. Ghost Eye tried to explain what he saw, the behavior of the guards, the way the convoy scattered with precision, the fact that no one even checked the body he dropped. It was staged, he told them. They knew I'd take that shot, but his warning was brushed aside. They told him he was exhausted. Maybe he was. Maybe the heat, the isolation, the adrenaline, maybe it was playing tricks. But then came the first hit. Just after 0000 hours, the base's south watchtower went dark. Power grid failure, they assumed, standard malfunction. But within minutes, the eastern gate reported movement, shadows, too many to count, crawling over the ridges. The perimeter alarms screamed, and before the guards could even unclip their safeties, mortar shells began raining down. The sound was deafening, a sudden, coordinated, precise assault. Not a skirmish, not a probe. This was war. The base lit up like a bonfire. Sirens wailed. Soldiers scrambled for weapons, digging into foxholes and makeshift defenses. Dust clouded everything, and the rhythmic thud of RPGs pounded the ground like drums of a funeral march. Ghost Eye, still in partial gear from the debrief, grabbed his rifle and sprinted to the Overwatch tower. There, through his scope, he saw what no one wanted to admit. This wasn't retaliation. This was retribution, planned and personal. The enemy moved in waves, using tactics stolen from years of watching U.S. movements. Their timing was flawless, their equipment unexpectedly modern. Thermal cloaks, jammers, even drone decoys. Someone had invested heavily into this force, and they had studied every inch of the base layout. Ghost Eye's bullets found their marks, dropping 3, 4, 5 attackers, but they kept coming. They weren't afraid. That was the most terrifying part. They had no hesitation, no fear of death. It was as if they believed they had already won. And maybe they had. The radio channel screamed with overlapping voices. We're overrun. Multiple breaches on the west wall. We need air support, now. But the air was silent. Too late, too far. The base had always been vulnerable, its location chosen more for strategic oversight than defense. Tonight, that decision cost lives. He saw them fall, soldiers he'd eaten with, trained with, blood beside. Some never got to fire a single round. Barracks were lit aflame. The command center took a direct hit. Ammunition stores detonated with thunderous fury, sending shockwaves through the sand or still. The sniper didn't stop. He rotated positions, fired until his scope cracked from a glancing ricochet, then switched to iron sights. At one point, through the smoke and haze, he thought he saw a familiar silhouette on the enemy side. Tall, broad-shouldered, hands gesturing confidently, directing the attackers like a conductor of violence. He couldn't be sure, but deep inside, a dark thought bloomed. That's him, the real target, the one who let me take the shot. The smoke still clung to the air like a ghost that refused to leave. Dawn broke over the shattered skeleton of the base, painting the ruins in muted gold. But there was no warmth in that light. Bodies lay under hastily thrown tarps, their boots sticking out at odd angles. The smell of burning fuel and blood mixed into a stench that would haunt anyone who survived. Ghost Eye sat in the wreckage of what had once been the operations room, his rifle resting across his knees, eyes fixed on nothing. He had survived, but it didn't feel like survival. It felt like punishment. The interrogations started before the fires were even out. Command didn't waste time with grief. Not when an entire forward operating base had been reduced to ash. They needed answers. They needed someone to blame. And Ghost Eye was the obvious choice. The sniper who had pulled the trigger that set the dominoes falling. The man whose perfect record shattered in a single heartbeat. They put him in a steel chair under harsh white lights, questions thrown like bullets. Why take the shot without secondary confirmation? Why ignore standard verification protocols? Did fatigue impair your judgment? He sat there, silent, letting their words cut into him. Because the truth wasn't in their questions. The truth was in the echo of that shot, still ringing in his skull. He replayed it over and over. The moment through the scope, the man's face, the posture, the flicker of doubt that had crawled through his mind just before the squeeze. He had dismissed it. He had trusted the intel, trusted the pattern recognition drilled into him after years in the field. And yet, every instinct now screamed that he had been led to that shot. It wasn't an accident. It was a performance, and he was the audience and the actor all at once. The interrogators pushed harder, circling like vultures. Do you understand the cost of your mistake? He almost laughed at that. Understand the cost. He could smell it. He could hear it in the silence of voices he would never hear again. The cost wasn't a number on a report. It was names, faces, conversations that would never happen. He didn't answer. What was the point when they finally left him alone? The room felt too big and too small all at once. He stared at the steel table, its cold surface gleaming under the fluorescent glare. His reflection stared back, hollow eyes, unshaven jaw, grime etched into every line of his face. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of what he had become. Not a ghost, not an eye, just a man who had been played like a pawn. The next day brought confirmation of the nightmare, intercepted enemy comms, decrypted after hours of analysis, told the story in brutal simplicity. They had known he was coming. They had studied his methods, his habits, his tendencies to act when hesitation meant losing a window. They had built the perfect trap, wrapped it in intel leaks and false convoy movements, and left the bait right where they knew he'd bite. The decoy had even been selected to resemble the target, just enough to trigger a kill shot. And Ghost Eye delivered, flawlessly, the real target. He hadn't just escaped. He had orchestrated the entire thing. And now, somewhere beyond the horizon, he was celebrating a victory that would be whispered about in war rooms for years. When Ghost Eye read the transcript, something inside him broke with a quiet finality. It wasn't rage. Rage would have been easier. It was something colder, the sinking realization that everything he believed about control, about precision, had been a lie. He had spent years convincing himself that the man behind the scope was untouchable, the master of fate in a chaotic world. But in one night, that illusion burned away. He walked the ruins of the base later, stepping over scorched earth and melted steel, counting ghosts. He didn't speak to anyone. What could he say? That the blood on the sand wasn't just theirs, it was his too. That every name on that casualty list was carved into him like shrapnel. They called it survivor's guilt, but that term felt too small, too clinical for the hurricane inside him. When the helicopters came to pull out what was left of the unit, Ghost Eye didn't look back. He couldn't. Looking back meant facing the truth that this war wasn't fought with bullets alone. It was fought with traps, with psychology, with moves so precise they made even the sharpest shooter blind. He returned stateside weeks later, but home wasn't home anymore. The city noise felt like gunfire. Every shadow stretched too long. Every sound of static on a TV pulled him back to that night when the alarms screamed and men died. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating. Every time he